Hello everyone, Danny here today to talk to you about the audiobook, The Inner Game of Tennis, written by Timothy Gallwey. I'm fairly certain I pronounced that last name correctly. In this review, I am going to cover the direction and narrative of the book, its purpose. I'm going to cover the job that the narrator himself does, a few surprises that I found in this book, and whether there's anything in this book that someone who plans to listen to it around small children or in a workplace might want to be aware of before they listen to it in those places. But before I get started, if you're like me and you love audiobooks, however, you really hate getting well into an audiobook only to decide, you know what, I'm not enjoying this, I'm not going to finish it for whatever reason, subscribe. Turn on notifications down in the comments down below. Leave me the names of any books you would like me to check out for you. I'll listen to the book. They need to be audiobooks. I spend all day in the cab of a truck. Works really well for listening to audiobooks. Not so well for reading. Kind of dangerous that way. I'll post a review. You take it from there. Now, to the book. This was a book that I actually thought I was familiar with. It has been quoted in several other books, and I got it because I was curious. I keep hearing the book referenced and hearing the book referenced, so I need to go to the source, the book itself. And I'm really glad I did, because every mentioning of the book, The Inner Game of Tennis, talks about one small part of the book. And while it's kind of an overarching theme of the book, it's also a small part of the book. And that is, so Timothy Gallwey was a tennis pro who was trying to figure out why the more instruction he gave people, the worse they oftentimes did. And one day he almost thought to himself, hey, am I the problem? Am I screwing things up? Does my teaching get in the way of what they're doing? And it caused him to experiment and to come up with this idea of two selves, self one and self two. Self one is our conscious mind. It's what tells us, when you're playing a game of tennis, put your foot here facing just this, firm up your wrist. Okay, firm up your wrist. Come on, firm up your wrist, you idiot, firm up. It's the one that does all the self-talk. And so it's our judgmental self as well. And then you have self two, which is the unconscious self. And it just does what it needs to do. And what he realized was the way he was teaching people was putting their self one in charge, and they weren't able to perform at their best because their self one kept interfering. That's the part of the book that gets brought out in other books consistently. That I expected coming into this book. And of course, that is covered in this book, as well as how to take self one out of the picture. The elements of the book that I've never seen talked about in other books that were really surprising to me. One, there's a lot of tennis instruction in this book. He goes into great detail, at least to me. Now, I'm not a tennis player, but it seemed to me to be great detail about the proper kind of form for a backhand, a forehand, a serve, things to focus on to improve your backhand, your forehand, your serve, things like that. There's a lot in this book of mindfulness meditation. He doesn't call it mindfulness meditation by any stretch of the imagination. He calls it focus, which is really what mindfulness meditation is. Mindfulness meditation is focusing the mind on the here and the now. And he covers that a lot in the book. How to use focus or mindfulness meditation to take self one out of the picture and allow self two to do what it needs to do. He covers some very interesting topics. How to utilize the act of watching professionals play a sport to actively improve your playing of that sport, which is a very fascinating chapter. I'd never thought about watching a professional actually being able to improve my game, but he makes it very clear that you can and you should do that if you're wanting to get better at a game. He waxes philosophical about competition. Is competition good? Is competition bad? Is it both, depending upon how you use it? And if so, how should you utilize competition? And he gives a history of his philosophy about competition, how he used to feel to how he now feels, and the conversations with his father, as well as his own involvement in competition that caused that view to change. And that's another really fascinating chapter. The book is good on the narration. I can't say it's a great narration. To me, the narrator neither adds nor subtracts from the book. And with a book like this, it would be very easy for a narrator to subtract from a book. So he does a good job. He doesn't add anything, so I can't say he's an amazing or a great narrator, but he's definitely a good narrator. He detracts nothing from the storyline. There's nothing anywhere in the book. There's one story that he starts to tell. There's an illustration that he starts to tell that involves a naked young lady. And so if you're listening to it around children or in the workplace, you do need to be aware of that. But it's not a lewd or actually sexual illustration. It is a very fitting illustration to the topic at hand, because a large part of the book is dealing with being non-judgmental and learning how to focus on what you're doing in a non-judgmental fashion. And that's exactly what that illustration illustrates. Is a story about three guys seeing a naked girl, and I'll let you listen to the book to figure out. There has to be, hopefully that got you your interest a little piqued right there. It is, even with all of the details about tennis, and I feel like I learned a good bit about the sport of tennis itself. Even with all the technical stuff in there about tennis, it's a fascinating book. You would think that if you're not a tennis player, all the fascinating details about tennis would make the book boring. But when he's going over those details about tennis, he's at the same time talking about things that you can apply to other areas of your life. He's explaining, this is, if you want to improve your serve, focus here, focus here, focus here. And you can take that and you can apply that knowledge to other areas of your life. I see why the book has been used time and time and time again. If you're like me and you've heard the book referenced several times, but you've never checked the book out, you really need to check this one out. On that note, if you like this video, hit the like button. If you like my channel, subscribe, turn on notifications, leave me any questions, comments, feedback in the comment section. That's what it's there for. But most importantly, no matter what else you do today, make sure that today you listen to at least one really good audiobook, and I definitely recommend The Inner Game of Tennis by Timothy Gallwey. Thank you.